My name is Ashley, and this is Let's Talk Dispatch.
I do. You're gonna do it. Do it really well.
And I believe the world needs more dispatchers.
Around in the mud, blood, and
plus
beer.
years that I'm not working 4th of July. 4th of July.
Say community policing, right? What about community dispatching?
So on this show, with the help of my guests, we will educate, empower, and support the heroes behind the headset. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode here on Let's Talk Dispatch with me, Ashley, the Raspy Dispatcher. Today, my guest has spent 13 years in public safety. They have been in patrol on the other side of the radio. They have been a corporal, communication supervisor, canine unit, detectives, records manager. The list goes on and on and on. They've had so much experience in this line of work on so many different ways of looking at what we do here, that they're coming to share their journey and their experience with us today on the podcast. Now they spend their time traveling the country, implementing and designing public safety platforms and mission critical services. My guest today, Cody. Hi, Cody.
Hi guys, how are you?
I am good. Yourself?
Doing all right?
Yeah, doing okay.
Sure am.
Well, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into public safety.
Sure. Like you said, my name's Cody Irby. I'm originally from Houston, Texas. I live just outside of Austin, Texas now. I was a police officer for 13 years for the city of Pflugerville, right outside of Austin, Texas. And luckily, at a smaller to medium-sized department, you get the opportunity to wear a lot of hats, right? And vacancies can happen quickly and things change quickly. So, I got lucky there. But, you asked the question of how I got into public safety. I was born into it. I was a fourth-generation police officer. Both my grandfather and my dad both worked for HPD, Houston Police Department, excuse me. There wasn't a chance for me to be anything else.
Wasn't allowed.
It's actually the reverse. It was kind of discouraged against, and that made me want to do it more, right? So,
Isn't it funny how that happens for parents, parents and their kids?
I've definitely learned that the hard way for sure. So that's pretty much what drove me there. And prior to starting in law enforcement, I was doing IT to pay the bills. And once I was established in the department and they found out that I did IT, it kind of blew up, right? And I should have kept my mouth shut, honestly. But it gave me a lot of really unique opportunities, and it just happened to be during a period where our police department was doing a technology rollover. And from the desk chairs to the mouse batteries, to everything in between, they were rolling over in a grant, and they needed somebody to chair that that spoke both languages. And so that I got voluntold into that role, a term I'm sure you're familiar with. And a couple of years later, we looked back and it was finished. As finished as finished can be. And I decided I had pretty much done everything that I wanted to do and set out to do in law enforcement. And Motorola was actively hiring for some really cool stuff that I thought I could help out with. So that's what landed me into Motorola. And then from there, I've gone through a couple of job corps changes into currently today I'm a software engineer. So it's really, really cutting edge stuff, right? Like what we're doing is for next year, not last year, right? Does that kind of answer your question?
No, it does completely. And I mean, it's always so interesting how because we're people like coming in and doing these jobs, and we have our own skills and abilities and things that we do outside of work that we do bring into work. And in your situation, your department, found out your secret, and it really benefited them in such a
Yeah,
positive way, that I'm sure they didn't expect, or even that you expected, because you made this shift to kind of get out of that, get into the family business, and then all of a sudden you're there helping develop the tech that really, I think, in policing in general, I think previously tech wasn't the motive, it wasn't the reason. It wasn't thought to be important, I think, in the past. And as
yeah.
technology grew, implemented, developed into such an officer safety tool, departments really invested in it. So,
Well, and you bring that up, and one of the key reasons that I made the move that I did is the same reason that I started in law enforcement, and it goes back to that family attitude that we were talking about. And the truth is that my father was actually killed in the line of duty, on a traffic stop during broad daylight. And
yeah.
I assume that when I entered my career into law enforcement, on some levels, I was wanting to see what it was like, right? And what
Mhm.
I discovered something, and it's not a good thing. And that's the day that I did my first traffic stop. I realized very quickly, in a 30-year span, nothing had changed
Mhm.
technology wise, right? I can get a Facebook notification on my phone immediately letting me know you liked my photo, but
Mhm.
I don't know that that car's stolen walking up to it, and neither does the dispatcher on the other end. And
Yeah.
today, that is, to me, unacceptable.
Mhm.
It's just ridiculous, right? And
Mhm.
that's that's what drives me on a day-to-day basis into public safety technology, and where it's going.
It really is so true how far off our tech, even the way we communicate, like through NCIC and these masks we use, and these, like, I don't think folks understand, at least on the dispatch side of things, like, to send a bulk message, I'm having to do line per line. It's not an open fill box. It's like I can't copy and paste this like
And
warrant abstract
it's
into
absurd.
this thing. Yeah, I remember at this agency, I had to do warrants, and I'm playing in NCIC a lot more than I did at my previous agency. So when I was going through my lateral training and I'm looking at these masks, I'm just like, we don't have an open form box to just be able to like drop a whole thing in here. Like, no, I'm copy and pasting line for line just because, and I'm no software genius, but I swear that's got to be just some type of code on the
I am
back.
not a software genius. I can write code all day, but I am not a genius most of the time.
But
I'm
I
just
just feel like,
figuring it out.
yeah, and I just feel like some things feel like such an easy fix, but I think we're just so slow to change. As you said, you're there on the job 30 years later, and it's just like, where have we improved in that sense?
Yeah, where have we improved technology wise as a public safety industry, right? Which is what we really need to begin thinking of it as, right? Like we need the Amazon of RMS systems, right? And that's one of the cool things that I am really excited and proud to be a part of with Motorola, is the integrations, right?
Mhm,
And that's where those forms that you're talking about for NCIC and such come in, because there are softwares out there that provide that ability, but the hook into their primary network for
mhm,
NCIC CIC is difficult, and it
mhm,
doesn't need to be, right? Like
mhm.
but it's the mindset of change that also kind of catches us, right? Like, what's the two things that cops and dispatchers hate most, right? And no change, right? So
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
it's it's difficult to do mass changes, right? Massive changes, and hit every checkbox, right? And that's the problem we run up against on most issues like what you just described, right?
Mhm,
Is not everybody has this software piece, or not everybody has this software piece, or
mhm,
it's just, yeah, it's difficult.
mhm, for sure. And so, as we said earlier, you've done so many things, as far as, public safety officer, communication supervisor, and when you came into your role, into your career, you probably had a little more exposure than most to public safety. What was your view initially on dispatchers? Did you have like an FDO who was like, don't piss them off? Or an FDO was like, you know, what was that relationship like for you and how has it developed
Yeah.
throughout that career?
So, growing up in law enforcement, right, and around command staff and around communication staff, around civilian staff, the mantra that was drilled into my head as both a boy and then again, that I took with me in my law enforcement career was respect everyone until they give you a reason not to, right? But love your dispatchers, right? They're gonna keep you alive. And it's just the truth, right? Like, I mean, if you're not clicking with who's on the other end of that radio, it sets the tone for the entire night, right? Or the entire day or whatever shift you're working, right? But I used to tell that, we all have our favorite ones too, but the really fast ones, and you're one of them. I already know it. So, and you make sure and take them snacks. You make sure and answer the the midnight runs that they need something, or if they need to. I was actually really fortunate in that when I started at my department, it was small enough that FTO forced a dispatch rotation for 3 weeks. So like you actually had to go in and take calls, right? Like you
Nice.
went in there and answered the phones and did the desk duty and it I think that was one of the best things that I learned in FTO was the other side of the radio, right? Because it's vast. The amount of jobs that y'all do in a 5-minute period when things are going bad is mind-boggling, right? And the amount of things that you can keep in the air and keep track of is debilitating. And you guys just float, right? And make everyone look good. And like I said, set the tone for the night. And that's truly what and how I feel about communication staff. That cops are nothing without them. So
It's such a relationship in that way, right? Like we can do your job, your job. They won't let dispatch out into the street. We'll just all get in trouble. So they only let officers come into the communications, and they're not letting me go out there. I'm just going code 3 everywhere, so they won't let us out. But that is my dynamic. We have to work together. We have to get along. We have to have a certain level of respect for one another. And it can get a little, like any relationship, a little funky sometimes, I know working at a smaller center where it's only me and one other dispatcher, and we got a hot call coming in, 6 911 lines ringing, one person working radio, and now we're both on 911 trying to get that information out to the officers, trying to run them, trying to get photos, trying to get, all these things while fielding multiple calls. And I mean, it can just be straining to be like, hold on, we'll field in a call,
And then somebody's reading a report on the radio and you're trying to play secretary. And I get it. I really do. I was one of those officers that I mean, obviously I was in IT, so it's kind of unfair, but if I could do it on my laptop and stay off the radio, I cannot preach that enough. I'm like, stay off the radio. If it is not an emergency traffic or something that is required by policy to be said, then don't say it. You have 8 other ways of communicating, right? With the person on the other end of that radio.
Yeah.
That is the emergency. And and I could preach that all day and honestly not get tired, and I would do it again tomorrow. So
Oh my gosh, it's so funny. So true. That's so and then that goes kind of full circle back to our technology, right? And having these systems that can talk to our officers, that these programs that can they have programs out there. I'm sure they have them at Motorola, where we can patch our officers into calls, we can live stream to their phones, like all these different ways to communicate with officers so they hear what we hear because the baseline of our job is that like we're trying to take this thing that someone's frantically trying to express to us and then telephone relay it to our officers out in the field so they like get that understanding like this feels really serious or this feels like maybe
yeah,
it's not so serious but we have to report what they're saying but you're trying to convey all that you're hearing that if the officer was listening to the call they go oh I see why they're trying to put it out this way or that way and
I
it's
mean,
just really a tough game of telephone.
as a corporal, right,
Mhm,
monitoring, um, any type of heightened scenario that I'm hearing
mhm,
on the radio, I can say almost every time I would pick up my phone, call the secondary dispatcher, she would pick it up, put it on speaker, and I'd just listen, right?
mhm,
Just so I could hear what the call taker was sounding like, right?
mhm, mhm.
It told me mountains about
Yeah.
the situation and about how we needed to respond and about how I needed to start thinking about allocating resources or um, you know, calling other people in or whatever, right?
Mhm,
Um,
mhm,
and you're right, we do have programs that are marching in that direction and today have that ability. It's not vast or widely accepted yet, but
mhm,
it does exist. Uh,
mhm.
it's just takes time, and unfortunately, law enforcement is always historically well behind the curve in technology. So
It is very true. I'd say in my last, I don't know, 5 years in dispatch, I feel like a lot of technology has really been developed and implemented. Like text to 911 blew up when I first started, they just implemented that. Locating tech like the rapid deploys, rapid SOSs, like all that tech blew up and was implemented as a new thing in our centers.
I've,
Um,
I think I've done at least 5 to 600 of both of the implementations you just mentioned, and
yeah, and it's just like the fact that we haven't had this, and more importantly, the fact that the public thinks we have this technology and have had this technology for years, and it's just not the reality.
it's not. We're not CSI, right?
Mhm,
We're not.
mhm.
We are hardly Walker Texas Ranger if we're being straightforward and honest, right?
Classic.
It, and I want you to prove me wrong on that, right? We're talking about an early 90s show, right?
Mhm.
Our national and state run infrastructure is from that time.
Yeah. Mhm, mhm. Wild.
Right? It just floors me. It just
Mhm,
absolutely floors me. And
mhm,
it's unacceptable, you know. So I mean,
mhm,
and it should be unacceptable to all of us, right? I mean,
mhm,
that we should all be willing to participate in making that better. And that's really what I challenge people to. Even, I got asked to speak at this new recruit that we had coming into the development space for Motorola, and
mhm,
that was one of the things that I said to him was I challenge you just find a way to make technology work
mhm,
to make traffic stops or assault calls or the 911 hangups this much,
mhm.
right? And if you can do that, you have had an absolutely successful career.
It's
If
so true, and it's really astonishing, like, how far that little bit goes, like, that thing, like, as you said, like, dispatchers are doing multiple things, we're juggling all these things in the air, trying not to drop stuff. And one tech that makes my job that much easier is just it just goes so far in my mental health and my
One less
ability to do
click,
my job.
one less
Mhm.
click, one less copy and paste.
Mhm.
Copy and paste.
Yeah,
If
right?
I see somebody copying and pasting in when we're doing development sessions and stuff like this, right? When we're
Mhm.
actually planning software or planning, a lot of what we do is planning uh, what I would call kind of inserts, right? So we're,
Mhm.
we're, we're inserting new technology into old tech, right?
Mhm.
So an old client, 911 type call handling client, and we're inserting the new rapid SOS location technology into it.
Mhm.
That makes sense, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And in those scenarios, one of the easiest ways to anger me is to add any clicks to the UI to leverage this new feature, right? And
Mhm.
that just drives me insane. And people don't get it. And that is one of the nice things for me, having the on the ground history that I had, and now being able to apply that in the development space is I'm finding to be kind of a weird niche, right? But it's
Mhm. Mhm.
really cool because everybody's very receptive, right? Everybody
Mhm.
wants to make this better, and that's an amazing space to be in.
Mhm. And, I imagine that it's just beneficial that, you know, when, they're trying to paint the software pink and you're like, no one can see pink in the line of work. Like they're colorblind. They can't see that color, and they're like, oh, okay, we'll make it blue. Like having that ability to just turn and ask you rather than taking the time implementing, getting the feedback, pulling it back, which I'm sure you do as well.
Sure.
But, kind of getting that feedback initially so you don't have to do so many changes, so many
Mhm.
upgrades, so many, because we want to limit, it's like anything we do in law enforcement. We want to limit our failures, right?
Yep.
And by
And
taking folks like you and putting them in these spaces where we're creating this tech, we are limiting our failures, which ultimately saves lives in the end.
that's what we're after. And absolutely, we were in meetings the other day, and I'm applying risk management scenarios that I use during SWAT planning, right? Like that, and
Mhm,
and we're doing those same steps to avoid any risk to the live environments we're ultimately playing with. And
mhm,
these are thousands, right? I mean, they're vast, they're everywhere from and in multiple different software suites. And critical infrastructure is critical infrastructure, right? And ultimately,
mhm,
the difficult part about affecting change today is on-prem, right? That's
mhm,
where our big hang up is, and people's willingness to adopt into cloud space. Uh,
mhm,
and it's it's warranted. It's
mhm,
a warranted caution and pause, right? To not just jump into that because we proved with COVID very easily and rapidly that the United States' internet infrastructure is not necessarily prepared for that quite yet. It's
mhm,
close, but we definitely saw an issue there, right? And
mhm,
so it's a fine line to walk between staying cutting edge and
mhm,
staying with what's stable, right?
mhm, mhm,
You have to kind of be willing to be open to newness and be open to a certain amount of risk,
mhm,
cutting
mhm.
edge, right? And to have all the cool toys that make your job so much easier.
Yeah. Yeah, no, a bad day in dispatch is when our technology fails, you know what I mean? Like, that is a bad day in when I have to start like, you have to, like, find a pen and paper. Like, what's a pen and paper? Like, where is that? I don't know. Where do we
That's,
even keep that in here? I don't
and that's unacceptable, right? And our
Mhm,
push, you know, our push in the industry is to make that not a thing.
mhm,
That right there, what you just described, is not a thing, and what that requires is offline clients capability, right? and then some sort of rectification with a database after that. And that's hard. It's hard with the cloud too, but we're getting there, and that's going to be some really cool stuff to see. Where you can continue to operate without pen and paper, right? Even in an internet outage scenario, which is always the biggest scare with the cloud space, right? So if we can mitigate that as an industry, then we've really done something and really moved into the next wave.
Well, circling back to your history and your role when you were a communication supervisor, I know that everyone's setup in their centers looks a little different. Some folks have sworn units as, managers and supervisors in dispatch. Some don't. What did making that switch from patrol into a dispatch supervisory role, how did you manage that? And what advice would you give someone who's kind of transitioning into a leadership role in the center?
So here's what happened. I started like that because that's exactly how it happened for me, right? So we were in our technology rollover, right? During our technology rollover, about the dead center of it, pretty much our entire command staff from our chief to lieutenants rolled over as well. So I won't go into reasonings. It just happened, right? But that also included our comm supervisor. And when the new chief came in, obviously when a police department does like a CAD RMS rollover, right, into new software, not an update, but like into a new platform, right? Pretty much you have to go through and reevaluate every single business practice and how it ties into that system, right? And that's everything from like, how do you confirm on a local warrant, right? It's a very simple process for you, right? But what if it's a new software piece? It's not such a simple process then, right? We have to figure it out, and then we have to rewrite policy, right? Then we have to train on that policy. Then we have to make sure that they're actually doing it, right?
Yeah.
So what ended up happening was, because we were already in the process of that, and the comm supervisor left, and there was no interim body to take it over, I was reassigned. And that's how I got stuck into that position, right? I didn't ask for it. But luckily, the comm supervisors that were under me during the time were awesome and amazing, and it opened my eyes more than I already had them open. I already very highly respected dispatch, but it was more just on the technology level and just for everything they dealt with there. When I got into the employee management side of it as well, right? The people aspect, the personalities and the sick days and the kids and it was challenging and rewarding, and I honestly, like I said, to this day believe every cop should have to be in dispatch and regularly, like I think it should happen at least once every 4 or 5 years at most. I also firmly believe every cop should get a psych eval every year. So
I wonder every day when it's looking at me and my coworkers like, how did we get through that?
no idea. I don't know how we got through it. I don't. I know what you're talking about, but I don't know how we got through it.
Oh man. But it's so true that, and I feel like it goes back to that dynamic between patrol and dispatch and, do my job, do your job, yada, yada, yada. And there's so many benefits to having patrol in-house in a comm center. because they see things that questions and different angles, perimeters. Like I can just turn and have the patrol guy who used to do patrol who's now running dispatch look at the map, help me figure out a perimeter and all that. All that is amazing, So there's definitely benefits to having someone who's sworn running a dispatch center. And then there's also benefits to having someone who's non-sworn, you know, because what we learn from each other, it's just, I mean, I learn something new every single day,
Yeah.
from my coworkers, from my units, from our citizens. And it just goes a long way.
I have this saying that my coworkers actually like roll their eyes at when I say it now, but it's actually on a plaque, but it's above the wall up there. But it's the day that I stop learning is the day that I die, and the day I stop sharing that knowledge is the day I stop learning.
Mm,
And if you can't live by that, right, then you're already just wasting your life, right? Like, I mean,
mhm,
the whole point is to train your replacements,
mm, mhm,
absolutely, in every scenario, from
mhm,
tech to cop to dispatch to you know a mechanic on the street, right? Like your job is to train your replacement, to train the future and make it a little bit better than how you did it, right? Because
mhm,
I made plenty of mistakes in I think the year that I did that job, and it they're mistakes that I wouldn't make again because the people that were there with me I truly learned to care about and respect and understand how much load they carry, right?
mhm,
And how much how much they just choke down to
mhm.
and never say a word about. So, you know, nothing but respect for them.
That's awesome. And I feel like the ability to learn from each other and then keep it moving because dispatch, we're famous for eating our young, when we talk about we should be training our replacements, there is this thing that we're combating in our dispatch centers where it's like, we're training in trauma and we want you to, learn how to do this uphill barefoot in the snow and it's just we really need to get away from that because we all want time off and if we don't train no two people to come in and work this job none of us are going to be home for the holidays. You know what I'm saying? So we definitely need to get into a place where we're really empowering
Yeah.
these new kids to do the job well.
Look, we're law enforcement is slow at evolving, but we are not in 1990 anymore. And
Mhm,
I'll give you a prime example, right? I in my in my career, one of my biggest focuses was the tactical area, and what I consider one of my better achievements was I was the team leader for the SWAT team at Pflugerville, and it was a blast. But in the course of all the training, right, and going to I think 5 or 6 different SWAT schools and sniper schools and advanced train the trainer schools for all that tactical ninja stuff that I do nothing with today. Um, it, the schools that I went to that beat the crap out of me,
mhm,
right, and ran me till I couldn't see, and made me do push-ups until I couldn't feel my hands, and do sit-ups until I couldn't feel my stomach. I remember zero from other than
mhm,
the pain, right?
mhm,
But I remember the pain. I
mhm,
remember that really well. The schools that were low speed that,
mhm.
that didn't focus on like the macho, oh, you got to be SWAT and you got to lift 300 pounds and you know have a flat top and
Yeah.
drive a black Chevy pickup and wear Oakleys. You got the if you don't fit that mold, if the schools that didn't focus on that and they just focused on the tactics, right?
Mm,
Just the job, just the tactics, just the art of keeping yourself alive. I
mm,
remember tons. I could quote probably
mm,
4 or 5 different days of that class, just you know, because it was brilliant. and that it's the same mindset when we're dealing with with employee problems, and especially specifically in dispatch, because dispatch is like a sewing circle with a bottle of Fireball, right? And like it's the source and the end of all rumors, right? But
Mhm,
it
mhm,
it just is, and we have to accept that, and it always will be. But it doesn't mean we have to respond to it the same, right? And
mhm.
it's if we apply that same thing to it, right, where we're not trying to cause people pain during training, and we're actually trying to teach them something and teach them that, hey, your personal life is important, and so is your mental health, and so is this job, but not as important as the first two.
Mhm, mhm.
Retention will get better, right?
Mhm, mhm.
We can't seem to do that, right?
Yeah,
We seem to eat our own.
yeah. It's that slow change in learning and growing and developing that, we're even doing in our training methods in our centers. And, I'm not the perfect dispatcher. I'm not the best dispatcher out there.
Shouldn't.
Um, I mean, I
Not
think that because that's the only way you qualify to have a podcast, but but reality is, I'm a
wing it.
human doing a human job,
Yeah.
and there's always something I can learn, and there's always something I can be better at, and I know how important having a good experience in your training is. Like you said, you actually learn from those certain schools that actually take the time to develop you versus the ones who just kind of run you ragged. Because I know for a fact if I had a poor training experience in getting into this job, I wouldn't be doing all this. I why would I want to give back when I had a crappy experience coming in? Someone who, you know, uh, doing this job forever treated me poorly. Like, why would I want to give back to the field if that was my experience? But it wasn't. I had a wonderful training experience, which I know is not something everyone can say, but it is something everyone should say.
It absolutely should be, right?
Mhm.
It always should be. And if if you are an FTO, I don't know what you call them at your department. If
Mhm.
you are a training officer and you are making people miserable, get out. Get out right now today. Get out, because we have enough problems hiring people to do
Mhm.
public safety job, right? We have
Mhm.
enough problems keeping people alive. We have enough problems keeping our heads on straight, right?
Mhm.
Because of the things we have to deal with from the job. We got enough problems, right? We don't eat our
Ain't
like,
that the truth?
why do we eat ourselves? Like, I don't
Mhm.
never understood that. A day in
Mhm.
my career, a day in my life, I've never understood
Mhm.
why departments, and this is every department, trust me, because I'm
Mhm.
not just talking about my little podunk PD that I came from. I'm talking, you know, the thousands of police departments that I've worked with since in my
Mhm.
6 years at Motorola, doing the implementations and doing development work and doing customer success and us and rescue work, right?
Mhm.
Covering agencies that have been ransomware and hacked, and let me tell you something, that all the same people are at all the departments. Like you can almost you can almost tell their name before they even tell you. They're exactly like this guy, right, who complained a lot, or this
Mhm.
dispatcher is awesome, and she's just like that one that I used to work with, and
Mhm. Mhm.
you can tell them right away. But it it means they come with the same drama and the same investigations and the same IDs and the same everything, and it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing.
Well, we're talking about the tech and, and change and people accepting the change. And, why is it so important for first responders in general, from patrol all the way up to the dispatch centers, to accept that implementation of new technology?
Right. Yeah. So like we were talking about, it's a fine line, right? Uh,
Mhm.
everybody is scared of change. Everybody's scared of updates. Updates are horrible, right?
That's why they happen at 4 in the morning instead of 6 p.m.
And but for that to happen, right? For us to do it at 4 a.m. or 6 a.m. and stuff, then guys like me, right? Which I'm perfectly willing to do, and get up. We got to get up and we got to be there because if something goes wrong with that, we want to get in and get it fixed quick. But one of the key problems that I'm sure is just going to shock you, right, is communication, right?
Mm.
Communication is always the biggest pain point.
Mm.
If you're scared about an update, ask. Like if there's a particular event that's happened in the past, when you've updated, tell us. Call it out, be vocal, right? Talk. You're not going to be wrong. I mean, even if you do say something wrong, the information behind it will probably help. But for departments, the best thing that I can suggest and the best thing that I can say is have good risk management and evaluation in place before you do anything, right? Always have a backup plan. We have a backup plan for everything in law enforcement and fire, MS, right? And everything has a backup plan and another one behind that. And then we've got a guy that's just sitting around in case that doesn't work, right? So, but how many times, right, do we see it where departments just aren't verifying that that's even in place? But beyond that, it's done once at the very beginning of a setup, right? And then it's never practiced. I mean, when's the last time you did a cat out drill, right?
No,
You don't do that.
no, yeah.
No one does that. No one wants to, right? But does it happen? Why is it any different than than dry firing your weapon, right? Why is it any different than sitting in front of a mirror and drawing it to get muscle memory, right? Why is it, have a backup? It doesn't have to be pencil and paper. There's other out there that you can go to when there is a cat outage, but we don't plan for it. We just hope they don't happen, right?
Yeah. Ain't that the truth?
So like staying on the cutting edge of technology is difficult. You have to have a plan. You have to have communication with whatever entity you're working with, whether that's Motorola or Central Square or Rapid SOS or Mark 43 or I have used or seen used or demoed or played with all of them. P1, Tyler Public Safety, kind of a spinoff of Central Square, but same thing. Hexagon CAD. I mean, I could keep going, right? And then there's thousands of mom and pop organizations out there that produce CADs. Be careful what you buy software wise. Do the research. Just because the department next to you has it does not mean it actually works.
Yeah, ain't that the truth? Just means they're stuck with it.
Right? But also, once you do buy in with a vendor, and I don't care who that is, I really don't. Like, you cannot run a department with a single vendor yet. Motorola will be there. I promise Motorola will be there. But you can't, you're not there. We're not there yet, right? And whatever vendor it is, don't go years without talking to them.
Yeah.
Like, provide feedback, right? And that, use the stupid portals, right, that they give you. Use the newsletters and the emails. Read them, right? Because there's important stuff there. I can't tell you how many people get surprised in updates with new features. Right? That's a very common problem across software suites, is that we add a feature and we put out newsletters about it. Feature goes live and everybody's surprised, right? Like, but that's not just us, right? I've seen that out of Hexagon. I've seen that out of Central Square. I've seen that out of Tyler. I've seen, same deal. Tracking change is always hard. but it's harder if we don't get feedback about it, right? We can't fix what we don't know is broken.
Mhm.
Feedback, communication, so back into the loop, right?
It's so funny how in this line of work where we're literally like, sometimes I'm communicated out. You know what I mean? I've been talking to people 12 hours a day, some people yelling at me, some people very kind, and the job is communication. I work in a communication center. I communicate with my officers, I communicate with my callers, I communicate with my coworkers. And yet we still have so much to learn about communication.
Well, and a lot of that we're trying to automate, right? Like
Mm.
telemetry wise, we're collecting a lot more data today than we ever have been, right?
Mhm.
And what that's giving us is the ability to automate that stuff where we know where there's a problem before you tell us, right?
Mhm.
And that's where we want to get to. Just got to get there, right? And
Mhm.
we need the feedback for sure, and be willing to test. And if you can, one of the biggest challenges for all public safety software is mirroring environments, right?
Mhm.
We do our absolute best to set up a one for one scenario between your site and what we're building in house, right? It's never the same. Never, ever the same. It's never the same. Not ever. And so, if you have when you're doing your infrastructure planning, when you're doing your budgeting, right?
Mhm.
And if you are in those spaces, make sure you're planning for sandbox space, right?
Mhm.
Make sure you're planning for spaces that people can access and play with that's not production, right?
Mhm.
So that you
Mhm.
can test upgrades from various vendors. You
Mhm.
can, you can have users and dispatchers log into to updated servers before you're actually using them live, right?
Mhm.
And make sure they can dispatch, make sure they can send a unit, make sure response plans are working, or their
Mhm.
auto 911 sequence works, their call handling still talks, right? Uh,
Mhm. Mhm.
all of that before actually going live with it. And that's something we preach constantly. And I can't scream that enough, have a sense.
It's true. I mean, like you said, we have to be able to communicate with each other. We have to be able to communicate with, our providers, our vendors, because like you said, you can't fix a problem you don't know exists. And you got all these people with all these abilities, knowledge, talents that that feedback might spark like this huge drastic implementation of this new tech that just fundamentally changes the way we do things.
Happens
And
every day. It happens in the spaces that I work in.
mhm,
Just one little thing from a customer will change an entire project, right?
mhm.
And that's why that information is critical. We need to know when something's annoying.
It's
We
true.
do. We need to know when this
Yeah.
sound defaulted on is stupid, right?
Mhm.
We need that information. We need to know that your left control key doesn't work, but your right one does, right?
Mhm.
Because I can't
Mhm.
fix that control key so that your quick command works until I know it is, right?
Mhm.
And it's just simple stuff like that. And so often what we see is like I said, that break in communication where we go years without hearing from a department, and then suddenly they're like, "Hey, we're done. We're going to go with X," and
Mhm.
it's horrible software. And I hate to see them do it. You're
Mhm.
never going to talk them out of it, right?
Yeah.
What do you do? I mean,
Mhm.
if we're not getting communication about what's broken, we can't make it better.
Mhm. Well, Cody, as we wrap it up here, the last question that I ask everybody, and for you, because you've done all the things in public safety, is a little more specific to that, which is what advice would you give someone who is considering a career in public safety in general?
Have an open heart. Be careful who you trust.
Mm,
Write everything down. Everything.
mm,
Everything down. and treat everyone how you would want your mother to be treated in every scenario. Every scenario. And if you cannot do that, if you can't commit to those things right now today, don't do it. If your heart's not in it, it's not worth it. It's a lifestyle, but it's more than that. It's a religion. It's a mantra. It's everything, right? And from civilian staff on up, everyone knows it. None of us deserve it on multiple levels, but the people that can do it are heroes, and just be cautious and be careful and be nice.
I love that. Be cautious, be careful, be nice. I think we could put that on a shirt there, Cody. I think we just created a new slogan there.
Yeah, it's kind of a spin-off on an old one, but yeah, it's that's something I've been saying for years. But be cautious, be nice, but be nice, be nice. There's too many instances of both of public safety entities not being nice for no reason. Be nice. Not everybody's an enemy.
Exactly. Well, Cody, thank you so much for being willing to come on and talk to me today. I love technology. I love where we're going with it in public safety. We've needed it for a while, and it's coming. It's coming around. We're getting there slowly but surely, and I appreciate everything you've done and everything you continue to do.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. I'll be right back with you.
Sure.
All right, everyone. That was another amazing episode here on Let's Talk Dispatch. Again, Cody, thank you so much for being willing to come on, share your journey, share your story. Technology, like I said, is just so important for us, especially in this day and age where we're walking around with computers in our hands and in our cars, and having this ability to locate folks and see where my officers are, and it just matters so much to improving officer safety. Second saves lives, and like Cody said, communication is key in this line of work, in life in general. So if you are someone who is working in your center, maybe struggling with a CAD program, have a CAD issue, even if you think it's something so small, communicate that with your vendor, communicate that with your supervisor. And if you are the point of contact between your vendor and your department, relationships go a long way. So make sure to really, invest and pour into that, and your company will do that for you as well. Everybody, as Cody said, be cautious, be careful, be nice. I'll see you next time. Stay raspy. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Let's Talk Dispatch, a Raspy Dispatcher production. If you like the podcast, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, leave a 5-star review, and of course, tell a friend. If you want to be a guest, head to theraspydispatcher.com and check out our additional resources. Until next time, stay raspy, everybody.